Welcome to War Groove. With Groove of War 5 coming up, I'm really excited to talk to Barrett, aka Gimble B, who's going to run us through some of the more interesting rules and innovations in Groove of War 5. Hey Barrett, welcome aboard.
Hey, how are you doing?
Now, Barrett is also a Twitch streamer. I highly recommend checking out their channel. So, tell us about Groove of War 5. What are you most excited about?
Well, I guess the big answer for that is the prize pool is really big this time around, and we're very happy about that. I'm very grateful to Fear Dragon, who stepped in and provided that for us. And that was him coming to us as well. Like he said, "Hey, I want to like help you guys out with some prize money." We were like, "Sure," and then I had a conversation with him again. He's like, "Yeah, I can give you like $1,000 for this event," and I'm like, "Okay."
That's incredible. So, Fear Dragon just volunteered $1,000 as a prize pool?
Yes.
That's amazing. I've got to give you and the other admins running this event props. It takes a lot to put this together. What was the most labor intensive bit of setting all this up?
This time around, maps and testing the format to make sure everything works. Groove of War 4, like, I think it was a good event, and it was much better than Groove of War 3, but it still had its issues, and we had some issues with things like, with Groove of War 4, we kind of like rushed to get the event out in time, so we didn't really test maps and format as much as we could have. There also wasn't as many options available for like timers, so now we have like the 45-minute chess timer, which didn't exist until the very end of Groove of War 4, but we didn't use it because like we didn't want to change rule sets mid tournament.
Right, that makes sense. So, do you think 45 minutes is going to be a good time period for folks to complete matches, but keep it interesting for spectators?
Yeah, I think it's a decent middle ground. We'll have to wait and see. We did Groove of Nations, which was like a team event that we ran earlier this year. That used 45-minute chess timer, and people seemed pretty happy with it. I didn't really hear much about timeouts, maybe like one or two cases where it came close. But generally, like I think this is going to be kind of the ideal time. And like we were thinking about testing turn timers out, but the feedback was overwhelmingly positive towards chess. So like we decided to go with that for this event.
Yeah, I kind of like the chess timers myself. In addition, this could be possibly the biggest Groove of War tournament yet. I mean, with that prize pool, a lot of folks are going to be jumping in. How friendly is this tournament towards players who haven't competed in a Groove of War tournament before?
I would say, I mean, if you've never competed at all, like you are still going to be jumping uh, into something like the first round is always a bit of a bloodbath, and that's like the case for every tournament ever. Um, but I think we've made some improvements to the way we run our Swiss system. So instead of playing one match per week, you play two, and that will help decide. Uh, it'll spread out people by skill bracket a lot quicker. So if you lose your first two matches in the first week, okay, maybe you like hit a really strong opponent. But the second week, you're going to be playing people in the same position as you, and then in the third week it'll be the same, in the fourth week it'll be the same. So even if you come in, you face someone who's like a veteran and you get kind of stomped, like you're gonna then go on and have a much better time after that point. So it's very much like you're gonna be diving in head first, but I think if people are okay with like, okay, maybe my first week, like I might just be like a learning experience and just like try and make the most out of it, and then like after that point it will be like a really good experience, especially for newcomers.
Okay, so you can expect your first match or two to be very difficult, but then the tournament will adjust with the Swiss system to put you to with folks who have similar number of wins, and you'll be fighting opponents closer and closer to your skill level.
Yeah, and because of the changes we made, it's going to happen a lot faster. So before you could be 3 weeks in, maybe even 4 weeks in before you're meeting someone your skill level. Now it's going to be probably even week two, you're going to start hitting people around the same skill level as you.
That makes sense. There's something I wanted to ask. I wasn't sure about this from reading the rules. Will you be fighting the same person? in your 2 matches each week, or two different people?
Same person. So it's the same map. So the each week is a set map, and you play that map twice per week. So and like the difference is that you swap sides. So if you're player one in the first game, you'll be player two in the second game. And it just means that if the map has a slight advantage to one player or the other, then that will get flipped. So if you're like a really skilled player against someone who's more of a novice, or just even just like an intermediate player, that person will more likely be able to take 2 wins and get and kind of shoot up the rankings a bit quicker. And you'll see that skill spread more. But in cases where it's like much closer, then that means like people go 1-1, and like if there is like a slight imbalance in favor of like player one or player two, then you won't get punished just for being on the wrong side. So it should be like a lot more fair, and it gives people more games. That was one of the big pieces of feedback we got from last event, was people were like, oh, well, 1 game a week, like I wish it was more. So we're giving people 2 games a week instead.
All right, that's pretty cool. I think more games will definitely help. So, for example, if two really strong players meet, and one of them just manages to win both times. Sure, you got 2 losses, but now you're paired against other folks who have 2 losses, and you're a really strong player. So you'll have a much easier time in your next game and be able to make it up. So with the increase in games, there's a higher likelihood that you'll be ranked closer to how good you actually are,
Yeah,
and
and
you'll have more chances to play.
on that point, it gives you much bigger potential to bounce back as well. So let's say you do go 0-2 in your first week. Well, now you've got 6 games to really make your mark and try and like climb back up, as opposed to before where you lose one, you've got 3, and you have to win all 3 of those essentially to have any kind of shot at making it through.
All right, I like that. So it's not too said and done. You have enough games to prove your mettle. That's pretty cool. And even if you don't win, you have a lot of games to try and get better, see how you stack against other people in the tournament. That's nice.
Yeah, and there's also the like let's say you play your first match and you lose, but then you notice and learn a lot about your opponent and the map. Uh, you will then be able to take that into your second game that week. So there's there's room for like personal growth in there as well. So if people want to just like take some time away, because there's a gap each week, so you're not playing like 2 games in a row. Like it is spread out a bit, so you do have time to like figure things out. And if you get caught off guard by like a particular strategy, then like you have time to like go and adapt for game two.
Now, let's talk about the timer. The rules mention that you should record your game to verify that it was played without suspension. Because obviously, you're not allowed to stop or pause the timer in the middle. That would be cheating. Um, but it's not required. Given that animations can change the amount of time the game takes to resolve, um, what would happen in the event of a dispute? And the player in question didn't record. The other player did, but the player in question says they had animations on.
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. So we've never had, to my knowledge, we've never had it be an issue before. I think we've had one time where someone exited the game and rejoined to reset the timer. But they lost pretty quickly after that point, so it was kind of a we didn't really it doesn't really matter too much if like the person loses anyway. Um but it is a difficult one. Ideally we're looking to stream a lot of these, so there will be admins on hand. I'd actually for until you mentioned it, I'd kind of like forgotten that this is a thing because it's been such a non-issue for such a long time. But yeah, I think that's definitely something we're gonna have to go and think about a bit more as like a as the admin team, and make sure that people are kind of prepared in case there are disputes. But generally speaking, like the rule is like don't quit out of your match and rejoin, because it does reset the timer in game, which can cause problems because that essentially means you get extra time to think about a move, which isn't fair. There are some niche cases where it would be okay, like if there's like an error with the game or something, then the players could go back and go to an admin and both back out of the game and say, we're just going to stop playing until we resolve this. That is acceptable as long as you're contacting an admin about something.
Right, I was wondering about that, because I was thinking, especially in the event of sudden death, where every second is precious. If I think that there's a sudden death victory on the table, I might want to immediately suspend to confirm that fact. But then again, if you're wrong, what does that do? Or do you just keep playing? Like, what do you do in a sudden death scenario? Do you wait to be notified by an admin, or do you just keep playing and let the time do whatever, and then the admins will tell you at the end?
That's very much admins will tell you at the end, because the way we did it last time and the way we're going to do it again this time is all the matches are set up by admins, and you're handed the codes for each week. So you don't make the lobbies yourselves, and the admins will keep those games open. So we can go back and record, and we can go back and verify results later on, which is very important for us. So we'll handle that end of things. And because when you're recording, it does show the timestamps for everything in the game, we can tell, oh, both players had under 30 seconds left on the clock, so this was a sudden death situation. But it is, when we were making that rule, it had to be something that was like completely visible for both players. So both players can see when their opponent is under 30 seconds and when they are under 30 seconds. So that's public information, so they know, oh, we're in sudden death now because like we've gotten to this point. And just to go into sudden death a bit more, like I'm very aware, and we're aware as a team, that this is not an ideal way to handle this, but it is better than what we had before. And that was really the aim, was that it was meant to be public information that both players were able to see, as well as admins. Understandable. So, hey, I have 1,000 income on my last turn before the timer ran out, and my opponent had 800. So, like, I get the win in this situation. And it had to be like a goal that like the players could go for that kind of makes sense. So you always, having a higher income is pretty much always good. Like, unless you're like sacrificing your entire army or something to get it. But generally speaking, that's like a winning state in the game when you have more income than your opponent. So we wanted the rule to kind of reflect that. And obviously, like, killing the headquarters of the enemy commander is much easier and faster to do, but yeah, like, it's just meant to be a, last time we had people just mashing end turn and hoping the timer didn't run out. So it was pretty bad when it got to that point. And we're hoping this time that we have this kind of like secondary objective that is understandable for people, that they can then play towards if they're both running out of time. That said, we've done a whole bunch of map testing this time around, and one of our big priorities was making sure that not only will it finish on time, but we've increased the time as well, so it's 45 minutes instead of 30, but that all the maps end cleanly under 45. We've had a bunch of maps that were like really good candidates that just weren't quite finishing in like a kind of clean enough time length that we were happy with. So like a few maps got like axed from being like potential candidates this time around. So yeah, we've made sure that we're like trying to like avoid this situation if possible in the first place. But yeah, you are right. There is still a bit of like, if players disconnect and then reconnect to try and give themselves more time, then that will be an issue. I would note that things like if you have like an Xbox or PS4 or a Switch, so if you're playing on console at all, I think PC has this feature as well. You can press your like like your share button, I think, and it'll record the last like 30 seconds. So if you notice the timer kind of skips up again, and like it's quite noticeable when it happens because like it will go up by like 20 seconds or 30 seconds. You can like take a small like video clip of that and like let us know about it, and like that will then mean that you have evidence that hey, like they did do this thing.
All right, so recording your own matches is a good defense against someone doing something untoward. And I've never heard of anybody doing this in the tournament yet.
We've had one case where someone spotted it happening, but the person lost, like a couple minutes later. So we didn't really bring it up because it was a case of like they lost anyway. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, like it is a rule and it will be enforced. And if people can provide us with evidence, so that makes our jobs a whole lot easier.
All right, so my next question: 9 commander bans, potentially. What made you decide to go with 4 blind bans per player plus Leota?
So there is lot. Alright, so we'll start with Ryota. Ryota is absolutely god tier.
Yeah.
He is a checkers piece on a chessboard. Like he's so good. And like you could be beaten. Like if you're playing a game of chess and your opponent has a checkers piece instead of a pawn, you can still win. Like you can still outplay them. But it's such a big advantage and it changes the game completely. Like Ryota plays nothing like any other commander. Uh which, you know, you could consider that a good thing, but it's just so strong that yeah, like it's a community agreed thing that Ryota is too good. So we have put him on a ban separately. So new players coming in don't have to like concern themselves. Then they're just gonna be like, okay, well, I don't have to like learn how to deal with Ryota if he does end up getting picked. Then below that, you've got, you know, like Caesar is generally regarded as number 2, but he can still be beaten. And then you've got like a bunch of other commanders that are also really strong. So we went with putting that in the player's hands, but in a way that isn't as punishing. So last time it was like each one player bans one, another player bans two, and then the first person bans another one. And that creates some like weird, like if you go first, you're at a big advantage in the ban system, just because of like the way that works out. So instead of it being like I go, then you go, and then I go again, it's we're both just gonna ban, and we'll see what goes from there. And when you do a system like that, you have to give people more bans because if we gave everybody 2 blind bans, then you know they might just ban 2 commanders, and then if there's ends up being 2 very obvious choices to ban each time, then we're just gonna see the same bans and the same commander picks over and over and over. So we increased it a bit, and there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff that can happen with that. Like people could think their opponent's gonna ban a commander, so they don't bother banning them themselves, and then you get to see some high tier action in there as well. Or you could see 8 completely different bans, so then you get to see some like mid-low tier action. So it's pretty exciting. I'm really hoping that it adds like a bit more variety. It fixes the issues we had with like person who bans first has the advantage kind of thing. And yeah, like it's just meant to be like shake things up a bit while being fair. And you know, the reason we have 4 is because, you know, 4 bans last time seemed about the right amount, so like give both players 4, and like in theory like they'll probably ban like a lot of the same commanders, so it should be okay. And yeah,
All right. So which commanders do you think will be banned or picked most often?
I think Caesar will be banned a lot. He is definitely considered not quite Ryota tier, although some people do argue that he is. But I think he'll be banned quite a lot. That said, I know people who are comfortable with the Caesar matchup who won't ban him, so maybe we'll see some Caesar in there. Beyond that, I think Nuru could be banned. She was nerfed, and we took trebuchets just out of all of the maps completely. So all 6 of our maps won't feature trebuchets, and that means Nuru can't summon trebs, and that was one of like Nuru's really strong plays, and why she was kind of regarded as like being at that kind of god tier herself. So she will be available now. She was banned last event because we still had some trebuchets on some maps. So I'm interested to see how like she plays out in the meta, but I still think she's going to be banned quite a lot. Volder I can see be banned quite a bit because he breaks certain maps. So that's more of a map dependent kind of ban, but I could still see him being banned quite a bit. So
All right, so basically the previous high tiers you're thinking will be touched again.
yeah, but I think what will happen is people more likely to be banning just like 2 or 3 of them, but not using their 4th ban. The 4th ban is probably going to be more like map or player specific. But I think we're going to see a lot of high tiers getting banned. But who knows? Like maybe people are comfortable with some high tier matchups and won't ban them. And that's where the variety comes in. So I guess we'll find out.
I'm really excited to see people trying to flip the meta, like allowing in something we think is high tier and then bringing in something else against it. Because with 4 bans, you can ban hard counters, which will open up more possibilities, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and you know who knows? Like you could pull off some ridiculous like win. Like I mean, the Groove of War 2 finals was like Sedge when people thought Sedge wasn't a good pick, beating I can't remember who it was. Was it Ragnar? But people thought Sedge was not a good pick, and to be fair, the Grooves didn't come into that finals match, but it was still like a Sedge won in like grand finals when people thought Sedge was not good. So yeah, like we could see something like that again, like someone bringing out a commander that's like mid tier or like even low tier and like pulling off something interesting.
Do you think we're going to see any Mercifuls?
We always see Mercifuls. There will be people who undoubtedly agree to play a Merciful Ditto. So yeah, I think we'll see some Merciful.
How do you feel about Mercifuls? Is it like a fun, memey thing or straight up BM?
I think it depends. If it's 2 very skilled players playing Merciful against each other, then I think it's like it's them just wanting to have a bit of fun. And that's fine. Like people I mean there's a lot on the line for this tournament this time around, but you know, at the end of the day, like it is for people to have a good time. So yeah, if someone I could see someone picking him on game 2 if there's a really uneven matchup, just to try and like make things a bit more interesting against like a weaker opponent, but I don't know if that's going to happen too much. And I think, well, I hope that if that does happen, then like it's not seen as like BM. It's just like I want to like make this a bit more of an even playing field.
Yeah, personally, I have no problem with that. If my opponent is beating me and they want to play Merciful, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean like the one time I mean I've played games where people pick low tiers against me, and it is a bit annoying when like you're actually trying to improve as a player and like you want your opponent to pick like the strong pick so you can actually learn how to play the game better, but ultimately it comes down to like the players in this context. So I guess we'll see.
Actually, I think playing against Merciful is really good practice if you're playing against a better opponent, because it's all mechanics. So you'll be focusing more on the mechanics of the game rather than the groove.
That is true. So
All right. So we talked about commanders, we talked about the new rules, sudden death, the timer. I think the most important thing is, I mean, what everybody's wondering. Who do you think is gonna win?
oh, that's a oh actually Zeronix. If Zeronix enters, I think Zeronix is gonna win. Um, he is really good at this game. And hasn't had much of an opportunity to enter as much. But if he enters this event, I think he's gonna win. He's my choice. Like,
Zeronix is the legend. but there hasn't been a definitive Red Jams versus Zeronix match.
Yeah, but I mean, Red Jams himself has said that he's like a bit rustier than he was when he won Groove of War 3. Although that said, I think a lot of people are going to look at this prize pool and suddenly start making a bit more of an effort. Um, and the thing about that is, it's not just about the money, but it's also the fact that like it brings a lot more prestige to the event, and it means that like people are gonna put more time and effort in. And I think seeing other people put more time and effort in means that like you yourself are gonna come in and be like, okay, I really need to like step up my game. And so the prize money is kind of like only a part of the puzzle. It's also the fact that like there's now like more prestige on the line, and now there's like more people taking it seriously, so you have more like fierce competition to win. So yeah, but I think Zeronix is my favorite for the event anyway. He is, and you know, like I play Wargroove at like a decent level. Like I can take games off people, like Shu, and I beat Red Gems for the first time recently. And but yeah, I can take games off like most of the people in the community. I've never taken a game off Zeronix, and it's never been close either. He is really good at this game.
Zeronix is pretty solid. That's for sure. All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything. This is going to be a fun tournament.
Yeah, I really hope so. I'm really looking forward to it. We're gonna be streaming a lot more. Oh, actually, one thing we didn't talk about, which I don't know if you covered it in your video. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but the way that we're doing when you're playing is changing for the Swiss rounds. So instead of it being a fixed time each week, it's up until that point you have to start your match. And if like neither player can agree to play early, then you play at the fixed time. So that should be a bit more flexible for people. And it also means that we can potentially be streaming a lot more as well. So I'm going to be looking forward to doing like a lot more streaming, a lot more commentary. And on a personal note, I've actually been playing the game quite a bit more recently and like wanting to just kind of get back into it. I was feeling a little bit of burnout, and I had a bunch of other like personal stuff to deal with, which I've mostly dealt with now. My half like constructed bathroom aside. Uh so yeah, I'm looking forward to this event. I think it should be good, and we'll be doing a lot. I want to do more streaming, I want to do more playing, and I'll do more commentary as well, so it should be a good event.
I'm very excited to see you streaming more, and you still have to show me how to play StarCraft.
I do have to show you how to play StarCraft. I'm very much looking forward to that. I actually remembered that like 2 days ago. I was like, oh yeah, I thought I promised Sneaky about this, but
All right, well, thank you very much. That was an amazing interview. I really appreciate it. Everybody go check out Barrett's Twitch. And if you have any questions or comments, shoot them down in the description below. Although I will say for this video, if you have questions about the tournament, join the Groove of War Discord and ask there.
yeah, it is a requirement to enter the tournament that you be in the Groove of War Discord. And if you play and you enter and you are like, I'm cool with this, and if you leave, that's great. Like, ideally you stick around, but like, as long as you come in and like have a good time, and then like if you decide it's not your thing, then like life is not a set in stone kind of thing. It's very much like a fluid experience. So I'm just like grateful that people are gonna like give us a chance.
All right, thanks everybody, and welcome to Wargroove.